Whoa.
Hey, everybody. It's Zoom, so take your masks off.
That was
Welcome to the third AES edition of Eventide's Quarantide, in which we discuss AES-related sort of things. I'm really excited to have this crew of people here present. We'll first get some introductions down. I want to first introduce our guests, our hosts from Eventide. Richard Factor, he invented the omnipressor. He's not just omniscient, but he's omcomprescient.
Omnipresent. Look, here I am.
And omnipresent. Richard, do you remember when and where your first AES convention was?
Yes and yes.
Okay, thanks. Moving on.
Shall I elaborate? It was in the New York Hilton, which was a very short walk from where the nascent Eventide was. And I think it was probably 1970. And everything we had there was fake. We used incandescent lights to simulate actual electronic activity, front panels that had nothing behind them. And our goal was to find out if anybody wanted any of the stuff we were thinking of making. And here it is 50 years later.
That trick worked.
Trick never works.
Well, also with us, and thank you, Richard and Tony, for dedicating Eventide resources to host the AES edition of Quarantide. Tony, I've known from a New York section meeting, not a convention. We met first at a New York section meeting. Tony, when and where was your first convention, and was there actual gear there?
Yes, there was. So I started at Eventide in early '73. I've actually dug out some relics. So this is my first AES journal from May of '73. And in that AES journal was the world's first digital audio product. It was a digital delay line. And Richard Factor, our founder, designed it. And if you step through this, you'll see articles about, like, can you see this? Can you hear the difference between a tube and a transistor? I guess the relics are not really working, but in any case, so the first that I attended was '73, and yes, we had instant phasers and instant flangers. It was in the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria. I was living in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, so it wasn't just a walk from Eventide, but it was a train ride from Brooklyn into Manhattan. My earliest memories of those conventions was the smell of burning tantalum capacitors. Back then, to regulate your power supplies, this is before switchers, you'd use these caps that were polarized, and we were building these things by hand in the basement, and occasionally we'd put one in backwards, and it would work fine until we tried to show it to somebody, and then it would burn in smoke, and you'd smell something burning, and you have to turn it off and replace it. So
did you?
Yeah, so I've been traumatized by going to AES conventions, and it continues to this day.
Did you ever try the flux capacitor? I guess when you actually...
You should mention that. We've done videos that... Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks again.
That's my
next, I want to introduce Maggie Luthar, and I have to read something because to understand Maggie, you need to know she cuts vinyl in Nashville, which is cool as heck. But she once led a panel at a convention in 2017, I think, that holds the record as the coolest title ever. And I know she wrote it. It was a panel for the archiving and restoration track. And it was called Tales of Asset Management, the good, the bad, and then she created a file name that she probably has seen as a mastering engineer.
Yeah, I have. That was directly from a project.
It's real? I thought you made it up.
It was real. Oh, no, it was real. It was real. Isn't that absurd?
The file name is v2_final mix_master_ all caps vox up _final .wave.aiff.
Okay, maybe the last part was not, but everything up to the .wave.aiff, that was all. That
So
was real.
awesome.
That was a real thing.
When and where was your first AES convention?
So mine was when I was a student at NYU. So it would have been my first year as a grad student back in 2005. And I just remember being kind of overwhelmed because it was, that was my first fall of grad school, my first year living in New York. And then on top of it, it was my first AES convention. And I just remember that the people that I went with we were all like NYU students in the Steinhardt program for the music technology department. And we just kind of walked around and tried to take it all in. I don't remember, it sounds horrible, but like, I don't remember exactly what I saw or what specifics, like, I don't remember the journal or anything like that, but I remember just being really happy to be around people who were working professionally in the field that I was studying in. And I remember I met some really nice people. And I'm not sure if that's the year I met you, John. I don't know if I met you then. I think I met you later, but who knows? But yeah, it was all kind of a blur, but I do remember coming out of it feeling pretty good about my experience going forward, and just everything about it was really positive. I think I bought a hat too. I think I bought an AES hat. I don't remember where it is now though, but I bought a baseball cap, I think.
So it's all blurry, but in a good way.
Yes, it's blurry in a good way. Yeah, I mean that's how a lot of the conventions are to me, just because there's so much information. It's not bad necessarily. It's just kind of it's nice to be immersed in the audio stuff for a couple days and to get to talk to people that I don't normally get to see. So that's good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Next, I want to introduce Jamie Angus, a silver medal winner of the Audio Engineering Society. She's a quasi-retired educator, but you didn't have to be a student of Jamie's to learn because she's constantly presenting at AES, and she's a really gifted presenter. She can take you from first principles to epiphanies and insights in one slide. But I think the thing I've learned from Jamie that's most interesting, and it comes from social media, and we don't talk about religion and politics, but she taught me the word cockwomble, and I'm really excited. Jamie, do you remember your first convention?
I do remember my first. It was the day after my birthday. It was Paris 1991. And that was my first. I presented a 4-channel, one of the really first 4-channel digital tape recorders that I designed and built at that. So that was kind of fun. What I realized then, I mean, I was a huge leap for me to do that because I didn't think I had anything worth offering to the AES, didn't have the confidence. But having got there, I realized I probably should have been coming a few years before then. So that was AES 90 in 1991. An interesting Richard Factor saying he went to New York in 1970. I actually visited WOR Studios in 1968, which was a trigger for me getting really interested in audio as a school trip, because I used to live in Nyack, just north of New York, up the Hudson River, near the old Tappan Zee Bridge, for those that know that area. So, and yeah, I met lots of interesting people there. I met Neville Teal and Richard Small, who both became good friends, and Michael Gerson as well. So I had a big opportunity to meet lots of different people, which have been really good.
Outstanding. Well, I'm going to hand off next to the hardest working man in audio education, John Krivit. I don't know if you've added up the numbers, but I would guess John has influenced the careers through direct teaching experiences of, it's got to be north of 5,000 students. It could even be 10,000 students. And then he's just contagiously excited about audio and runs Hey Audio Student, a Facebook group you may know of, where he continues to mentor even those who didn't have the good luck to be in class with John. So John, when was your first convention?
Thank you, Alex. My first convention was supposed to be in New York in the year 2001, but events prohibited that. So my first actual convention was in 2002 in Los Angeles. And two things I remember. One is sitting down for a long extended lunch with Dave Moulton, who mentored me and talked to me about my career and things I should be learning and studying and all kinds of opportunities that were out there and how I could really better myself as a teacher. That was unbelievably exciting to me, and I still remember that, and I'm still really grateful for that. The other thing I remember about that is I remember there was a kid who signed up to be a volunteer to watch the door, and he kicked a man out of the room because he didn't have a badge, and that man was Ray Dolby.
Oh God.
I thought that was funny. So I guess I'm supposed to introduce some of the other people. One is my good friend Alex Case. Alex Case, for God's sake, if you want someone to explain something to you about audio, Alex is the guy. Alex, what was your first AES convention?
My first convention was also New York. It was 1989. I was a student, undergrad at the time, and I had never seen an SSL at the time that I went. And at that convention, Tom Lord Alge with SSL had recalled a mix on the floor of the convention. So they didn't just have the console, but they did a full recall and they were playing the mix. And that was rather mind blowing to see a studio set up in the middle of the Javits. It was fun.
That's incredible. And Bekah Wineman, I remember meeting you in, I think it was 2010 or 2012 in San Francisco. Could that be right?
Yeah, it was definitely one of those
Bekah,
years because it was. I'm here. I just.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I think it was it must have been one of those years. My first AESO was in New York, and then the second year I went to San Francisco, but I think that's where we met. I don't remember how.
Yeah,
though.
I remember. No, I remember very well. I remember we met at the Education and Career Fair, and you were an undergraduate student at the University of Memphis, and we talked about what you were studying, and you had mentioned an interest in going to graduate school, which you eventually did at McGill. And I introduced you to Don Palouse, who was the just taken over as the president of the AES Education Foundation.
Yep, and that picture's still on Facebook too.
And you know what? This woman is a Grammy nominated audio engineer now, and doing all kinds of amazing things. I'm always excited to read about her great success, and not one bit surprised. Did you meet anybody other than me when you were at an AES convention?
I'm sure I have. I remember meeting my first year, because there's like a mastering, it was like a mastering chat, I guess. It was just people sitting around talking about mastering, and I met Mark Rubel there, and I also met David Bowles. I met both of them there, and I still chat with them every once in a while, and I hope they're watching. And those are the two that I distinctly remember. But I think like a lot of people's first AES conventions is kind of a blur, and it's really overwhelming and you don't know what to do. So yeah, those were the first little baby memories of AES for me.
Nice. Well, I'm glad we're still friends. And Joe Lord, I met you a year ago, not even a year ago. Joe, we were at one of those great after parties at Quad Studios in Times Square, where all these hit records are made. And I think I had recognized you from the internet or something like that. Joe, when was your first AES convention?
Well, believe it or not, John,
Can you
New
hear
York
me,
Just
Joe?
Gone was actually my first convention.
Yeah.
But I began doing other things like, graduate competitions and the Christmas lecture and social. Like I'd been to those, and in fact, it was a graduate poster competition that in 2016 at SSL that I was finalist for. That was my first ever. And I really enjoyed it, as embarrassing as it actually was for me, because I didn't know what was expected from a poster presentation at that time. And so I actually made a very nice kind of creative marketing type poster rather than a research one. But it did break the ice and kind of, got me and Nick Georgiev chatting, and we've been friends ever since then, and kind of helped me feel a little bit more relaxed and gave me something to laugh about in a quite intimidating environment initially.
Nice. Well, we're going to see you at many more
Oh,
to
yeah,
come.
you will.
Absolutely. And we're going to be friends forever. And Nikola Jeremic, Nikola, I keep seeing these things that get posted on Facebook that come around anniversaries of conventions that happened 10 years ago. Tell us about your experience with AES.
Well, my first convention was back in 2012, which was in Budapest. That was the first time I met you. You were actually the first person from AES I met there, since I just entered the doorway. And then I met Barry Marshall and Gary Gottlieb, and there was a lot of great people out there in Budapest. That was my first AES convention, and it was the first time I ever attended any audio convention. And then I applied for the student recording competition in category sound for visual media, and then I won that competition. So it was a literal Veni Vidi Vici experience for me at that time. And then it went on to becoming a regular thing every year. And I was applying for a student recording competition every year when I attended, and I was winning every year. So there's an internal joke amongst my generation of students of AES guys who studied with me and who were competing with me at different categories. They said that the only time Nikola didn't win at an AES convention was when he wasn't attending. so yeah, but it was quite a fruitful experience for me, and it helped me skyrocket my both creativity and my career in a really, really good way.
So you're in Belgrade, Serbia, and
Yep.
one of the and you've got a lovely career right now doing sound design for video games and movies. And one of the judges that you had is also here right now. And that's one of the great advantages, is that you get to meet these amazing judges. Mandy Parnell, do you remember judging Nikola's work when he was a student?
I don't remember, but I remember hanging out with him in Vienna. I did the student summit in Vienna, and that's when we met. And he asked endless questions that really upset. Yeah, no, but it really upset the other students. And by the end of the weekend, I got some of the other students around me, and I said, you know what, you really have been quite bullyish towards Nikola, and you watch what happens in his career, because he will fly and he will leave you behind. And that's what he did with all the people. They were very rude to him, but all he wanted was knowledge. He wanted to know the ins and outs of everything, and spent a lot of time, in the breaks and when we were hanging out, asking endless questions. And I loved his enthusiasm. And we became friends from that. So whenever we'd meet up at conferences, we'd spend some time together and walk around, and I'd introduce him to people that I knew and tell them how great he was, people that made software, equipment, and because, yeah, I just saw the energy. He reminded me of me when I was young, just that wanting to know everything, the great energy, that drive that makes us all keep going. But it upset the other students a lot.
Well, yeah, I think, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I like to call Mandy my adopted audio mother because she is really, we have that mother-son relationship when it comes to audio at every conference. She's my audio mom number one, and the second one is Linda Gedimer. If she's here, there, then big hug for Linda as well.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. And Mandy, you bring your expertise as an award-winning mastering engineer. You've done work for Bjork and lots of bands that I'm too old to know. And you are so generous with your time as a perennial judge for the student recording competitions. It's, that's I think something pretty amazing. And I know so many people who've, not just Nikola, but other people who've mentioned how kind you were and inviting and enthusiastic about their careers, and really there to be a wonderful mentor to people that show an interest in this kind of thing. So what keeps you coming back to AES?
For me, it's being around like-minded people. I feel that through my life, I often haven't fitted in. And the nice thing for me about the AES, there is no judgment about what I look like, how I act. We're just all there because we have this common love for music, for engineering. And yeah, just to be around people that stimulate my brain, really, I was really blessed to have 3 great teachers. I worked at a studio called The Exchange. So my first teacher was Ray Staff, then I had John Dent, God rest his soul, and Graham Durham, and 3 phenomenal cutting engineers from the UK. And they taught me a lot. And where we are now in the industry, a lot of the kids that are coming out, they don't have that. They're going to find it really hard to go into a studio and be mentored in that way. So part of what I feel with the education is about sharing and giving back, like what was given to me. Because I had years with sitting behind these engineers and being able to call on them. And still Ray, he will still call me, I will call him, we'll still talk. Even though we haven't worked together for years, but he's still like my mentor. He's still, my teacher in a sense. So,
Nice.
So yeah, it's about giving back, sharing the love.
So you're going to be a judge at the virtual convention again this year. Alex, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about what people might be doing at the convention, maybe who's presenting and who's judging.
Yeah, if I could just mention, in these pandemic times, we're not going to have an in-person convention, so we're going to have a virtual convention, and the convention that was to be in Vienna is now called Virtual Vienna. And we kept as much of that content as we could, and we're putting it online. And it starts on June 2nd, and it goes Tuesday through Friday, June 2nd to June 5th. And you should go to aeseurope.com to see the program, to think about registering and so on. Yeah, so some of you are actually actively participating in Virtual Vienna. So those of you who are, I wonder if you could tell us what you might be doing, from judging to presenting papers or being some sort of keynote fancy speaker person.
Well, I'm presenting 2 tutorials, 1 keynote. I'm on a panel, and I'm judging the student design competition.
5 things.
I'm busy.
So can you tell us what they are? Maybe the titles or approximately what to expect?
The 2 tutorials. One's transform processing of audio, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the other, that's sort of an entry-level one. The other one is going to go a little bit further, is on finite precision effects on signal processing, but also try and talk a bit about how you might do it not in floating point. So many kids these days don't know how to do stuff that's not in floating point because it's so easy these days. They're both
Are you
on
speaking? You're speaking to
Monday.
Richard when you say that, right?
Who's Richard?
Sorry, Richard Factor. He's one of those kids.
Oh right, Richard's one of those kids. Oh no, he's not one of those kids. He probably did signal processing in 12 bits like the rest of us at the beginning, or even 8.
Yes, it was 8.
Hey, it was 8, was it? Yeah. So now they're both happening on the Monday. I don't know when the student design one competition's happening. I was invited to do a keynote, which is happening on the Friday. And the workshop on gender issues in audio is also happening on the Friday. So I've got my work cut out for me.
Thanks for doing that. And just to be clear, that's all volunteer. That's all of us who work so hard for AES do it as volunteers. Jamie's a little crazy to be volunteering for 5 efforts for Virtual Vienna, but that's exciting. That's a good reason to be there.
It wasn't originally going to be that many, but so the keynote, I was invited to do the keynote, obviously after I'd suggested doing the other things.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that doesn't leave time for anything else to happen at the convention because Jamie's doing so much, but is anyone else doing anything?
I'm doing recording critiques. Ian Corbett always asks me to do that. He's like, I need someone. So I'm doing that on Friday. I'm not sure what time it is, which I need to look. I'm sure if he's watching, he's upset that I don't remember because I never remember. He just asked me to do it, and then I need to be reminded constantly of when I'm supposed to be around.
So how are the student recording critiques different from the student recording competition?
Well, at least in the real AES convention world, the critiques are kind of last minute. So if you have a mix and you don't have it ready for the competition because you kind of have to submit things earlier and have paperwork. But you can come during the convention and sign up on a list, and you bring the audio to the actual critique. We listen to it very fast and we give a little bit of feedback. And it's usually pretty nice because a lot of times people will submit stuff because they're like, oh, it's not good enough for the recording competition. And a lot of times it is. There's never really anything like bad or anything. So it's interesting. And I think it's maybe if you've never done a recording competition or like you're a first year student or something and you're a little bit intimidated by having to present stuff, this is a little bit easier it's more conversational. So I'm doing that Friday.
Actually, if I could,
so a little less
agree with Mark on that. Is confidence. Have a go, because really you're probably better than you think you are. Seriously.
Yeah.
Nice. And I think we have at least 2 judges in the student recording competition. Nikola, you're a judge for the first time.
Yep, for the first time, and hopefully it won't be for the last time. But yeah, I was invited by the student delegate assembly to become the judge, one of the 3 judges for the student recording competition in category sound for visual media, which is basically the category where I competed 5 years in a row. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting experience to be on the other side of it. Now that you get to give feedback to people who are basically almost your age, but it's pretty, and there's so much responsibility in being an AES judge, because even though there's always a lot of competitors out there in every category, but this one, I can't remember how many people were applying for this category in general when I was competing, but right now we had somewhere around 15 or 17 entries for this category alone, and it was mind-blowing. So you really have to take in consideration every tiny little nuances of their work and read their technical documentations, try to oversee, think how they're thinking, basically to see what they wanted to do there at certain points of their entries, without, you know, without, even if they didn't give you that much information in their technical documentation. So it was pretty hard to, you know, just select only the top 4 or top 5 out of it. And what I wanted to do right now, because I know how it felt like when you get you're in the finals, you know, but then your critiques come in after that in a, you know, in a spreadsheet type of you know, document. And every time when I competed, none of my judges were actually giving me any, you know, feedback, as in like, okay, it's usually, this is good, I like this, I like this, I like this, or, you know, well, you might want to pay close attention to this or this, but not in a way that like, okay, so if you have like a low end build up in your subwoofer, if it's like an action scene or something, somebody did a thing with reverb that caused a lot of sub low, and then, you know, I had to give them feedback in a way that, okay, you have sub build up in this, which is eating up your dynamic response of your entire recording. So try to fix it like this or like that, or like, you know, give them a couple of, you know, like a useful feedback in a way that you tell them what's wrong, but you tell them how to fix what's wrong. That is something that I never got when I was. So I felt responsible. Now that I'm one of the judges, I want to give students some actual feedback in a way that they can, when they get their documentation, they read it and they say, okay, so this guy says I should fix this and this. Oh, and he gave me an actual useful tip on how to fix it.
Sure.
So they learn something, even if they're not in the finals, they learn something. So I think it's quite, I would encourage everyone who is a student of AES to apply for the competition and for the audio critique sessions, because that's the best way you get to learn from the pros in the industry, aside from watching a whole bunch of YouTube
I have
people.
to say, you know, I show up at these recording competitions because I love to hear what the judges say. And to me, the judges are hearing things that are way beyond what my ears can pick out. And they are telling me all kinds of amazing, you know, they hear edits that might be sloppy, or they hear, you know, mix balances that aren't quite right, or they might hear over compression or all kinds of things. And it's wonderful. So when Mandy is there, I don't want to miss that. I want to be there to hear what Mandy has to say about a student mix. And it's always really instructive. So I think the lesson that Nikola, you mentioned, is that even if you're not a finalist in the competition, even if you haven't entered, to be in the room and to listen to the judges. The judges, I think, are amazing. They are the highest level professionals, and their feedback is, to me, is just incredible. Mandy, what do you think about that as a judge?
Yeah, I like that when we do that, that lots of the students come and listen and, you know, ask questions. And often throughout the convention, you will get to hang out with the students and, you know, discuss things with them, especially the ones that are in the competition, you know. After we know who the winners are, you know, then you can start talking to them. And it's been great fun encouraging them and encouraging, yeah, other students to apply for the competition. I love the speed critiquing. I think it's, you know, all of us that work in a studio professionally, especially for us in mastering, you know, we have to make decisions very quickly when we first hear something. So you get a very honest, off the cuff feedback with the speed critiquing, rather than the competitions where we have to go a lot deeper and look into what they're doing. And, you know, to judge one of them competitions takes a lot of time to go through, you know, all the applicants and narrow it down. And then the fun thing is where we'll have, you know, 4 judges, we'll meet up at the convention and we'll compare notes and decide who the finalist is going to be. But what I have to say, Nikola, is maybe they didn't give you feedback because they didn't really feel that they needed to, that you were in the right direction. Because I remember being in the room for one of them when, you know, you presented your stuff, and I mean, everyone went crazy over what you played and how you presented it. It was phenomenal. So it could have been that for you, they didn't feel that it was appropriate to critique you because they saw where you were at, and all right, there might have been mistakes. You have to think that these people are just learning. For me to learn my trade, you know, after coming out of studying, took me 5 years before I started getting some confidence. So what you don't want to do with the students is take away that confidence. So I feel that, you know, maybe they didn't judge you so harshly because you were at a level that for where you were as a student was phenomenal. And to critique you could have taken away the confidence that you had and that you needed to carry on with.
This idea of learning and mentoring, I'd like to expand it beyond the recording competition and the recording critiques, and ask each of you here, if you care to comment, how should someone approach you at a convention? Because all of us are learning from each other. Some of us have very dear friends that we met through AES, and you may not know this, but you're really scary at first. And so what's your advice for someone who doesn't quite know you yet for how to take advantage of the AES convention to have a one-on-one conversation? What are the sort of questions you want to hear, or the questions you don't want to hear?
What would you like to drink?
Talk to me if I'm buying coffee. Wait till I have it in my hand.
I will talk to pretty much anyone. I love talking to people. Anyone can come up to me, ask me any question anytime. I think there's nothing worse than feeling intimidated to go up to someone that you really want to ask a question, but you're scared. And I would always say just absolutely go and do it, because usually people are a lot nicer than they look.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of scenarios, either post, you know, panel discussion, you know, invite people to come and have a chat, ask questions, know a little bit more, know a little bit deeper, or indeed, you know, how I met John, you know, kind of after party, you know, just a kind of casual chat over a drink. You know, it's the best way to break the ice, really.
For me, I'd ask them to look down at their name badge and make sure it was turned the right way so I could see what their name is.
Yeah. I just come up and say hi to me. One of the things that happened to me at an AES convention was actually that Richard Small came up and said hi to me. And that was mind-blowing at the time, but also the start of a really good friendship. But I probably am scary. I never think I'm scary, but I'm really not scary. You can come up and ask me things. And I think that one of the things I found at the AES, there's lots of people who you think, oh my God, they're so high up, and you actually go and say hello to them, and they're actually just friendly. And,
you know, I also wanted to say, if you are at the AES convention, if you've made it there, if you have the nerd quotient enough to demonstrate your dedication and interest in audio, then I already know that you are somebody that I want to get to know. And that's it. If you're in the room, if you're within the confines of the walls, I want to talk with you. If you're an aspiring student or young engineer or aspiring teacher, I want to talk to you. I want to get to know you, because, you know, these people I see over and over. I'm thrilled to see their faces and to talk to them, and we're always looking for more great people to be part of that. Tony, I remember meeting you at the last convention after all these years.
Yeah, you came up to me, and yeah, I just want to, I mean, someone said this before, we're all there because we love music. It's a self-selected group. I mean, there's no other reason why you'd show up at this thing if you didn't have an inherent love for music and what it meant to you, plus a desire to understand how to capture and make music more inspiring.
Yeah.
And I do remember you coming up to me. You kind of accosted me. And
His name tag?
And I loved it.
I did. And you know, it was so cool that I somehow knew that this is a guy who would have a big David Bowie picture in his office. And it turns out I was completely correct. He does. So that's
I say, when my first AES convention was, I think, Paris 2006. And I was terrified, even though I'd worked for many years at the exchange, but we didn't go out to the conferences. It wasn't something, we had the APROS many years ago when I started over here. And I was really sort of worried about it. And another great mentor of mine was an engineer called Sean Davis. And he came to the studio that I was working at and said to me, Mandy, you really need to get involved with the AES. And I said, Sean, I'm not geeky enough to do that. I love music, I work as an engineer, but I'm not really geeky. And he said, that doesn't matter. We have loads of people that are very geeky that will share knowledge with you and help you learn stuff that you want to learn. But you have ears, you're frontline in a mastering studio, cutting phenomenal music with all these people. And the AES is not just about people that are very, very, clever with physics and building equipment. Don't be intimidated because you have something to offer. And if Sean hadn't have given me that chat, I probably wouldn't have got involved because I did find it intimidating. I went to Paris to look for equipment, and I remember meeting Daniel Weiss going up because I was interested in a piece of his gear. And I had a list of questions. And he's very shy. Anyone that knows him, he's a very shy, quiet man. And he took my list and just laughed and laughed at me, which really quite intimidated me. But I ended up spending the whole weekend with Daniel Weiss and Ralph Kessler. And they took me around, and they're both so intelligent and so incredible with their knowledge, but they just... We just had a great time. We ended up at the Buddha bar drinking till silly o'clock in the morning. And it's just that thing, you just get there because it doesn't matter what level you're at. People are very encouraging. We're a community that doesn't judge. We all have the same love. So that was a big thing for me. So that's how I got involved.
That's really wonderful. So, we all have this high noise floor communication world. And if a stranger emails us and asks us a question, we maybe can't get to it. But if you ask us that question at an AES convention, you've already been through a filter. You've shown your commitment, and the noise floor is much lower. We can handle this communication. So it's a way to take the big, wide open world that seems scary and make it narrow enough that you can interact directly with people who inspire you and often surprise you and become good friends.
Oh, really? I have great friends that I would never have imagined, would become really good friends of mine that are involved and all over the world. And it's fabulous. It just makes me feel like when I'm sitting in my room and I feel lonely, I think about it and look on Facebook and see posts of people that I know from the convention, and it just reminds me I'm not alone.
Well, the other thing I also want to say is that I don't think I understood this when I was in my 20s. I thought that people would be impressed by what I had done. And I think what people our age or older people are impressed with is a young person's curiosity. And
Absolutely.
so if you demonstrate that curiosity, you take the leap of faith, you show up at the AES convention, you're there to learn. I always tell my students, it doesn't just tell them I'm in my second semester with John Krivit, and he told me I should definitely come here to learn and make connections and to get as much, to really drive my interest in audio. And that's it. That, you know, I will go back and I'll look at pictures, I'll look at videos from 10 and 15 and 20 years ago, and the students who are in those pictures at AES conventions are invariably the ones with the best sustained careers, the ones who are doing the most interesting things in audio. Absolutely.
So you're all AES convention veterans. I wonder if there's something you've learned having been to so many conventions, something you wish someone had told you before your first convention as a way to get more out of it. What are your tips and tricks for how to get the most out of a convention? We've already hinted at an important one, which is go ask questions and interact with people. Don't be afraid. But what's some other advice you might have for people attending a convention?
Don't be shy.
Yes,
Don't
don't be
be
shy.
shy. That's the best. I mean, if I learned, I am quite how to say socially distant person, especially my comfort zone is my workroom where I have a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm mostly, you know, hanging out with synthesizers and guitars than with actual people. But you know, AES is one of those times in a year where I get out and I talk to people, and you know, people from AES remembered me as that kid, like Mandy said, that kid who asks a whole bunch of questions. I'm like, you know, you guys know that cartoon Dexter's Laboratory from Cartoon Network. So at an AES convention, I'm his sister Dee Dee. I'm like, hi, you know, and I'm always running around, you know, talking to people. And, you know, I met a whole bunch of, you know, great people during these conferences. And when I'm working in my studio, I'm the Dexter nerd, always so serious in his spot. When I'm at an AES conference, I'm geeking out, I'm fanboying, I'm the Dee Dee. I mean, there's a just because of that, I developed my social skills thanks to AES, and it helped me quite a lot in sustaining my career and you know, getting more and more work throughout all of these years. I know there's a little anecdote that I like to tell you about how I actually AES helped me, you know, develop my career. As John said, I'm a sound designer for video games, which is only half true, because I am something of a musical sound designer. Basically, I don't do Foley's, atmospheres, you know, sound effects and all of that stuff. I create virtual instruments and weird stuff, sampling them to use for it's what Jean-Michel Jarre would describe as musique concrète, you know. But it at my first United States conference back in 2014, I met my two of my heroes on the same day within 15 minutes of, you know, time lapse. So the first one was Eddie Kramer. I met him at an elevator. He was completely lost. He couldn't find his way at his own session. I was the volunteer, so I walked him to the hall where he was giving a lecture, and we talked about Jimi Hendrix and all the stuff that he did. I was talking nonstop, yada 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 yada. He said, like, you in the 60s, if you were born in the 60s, you would have been amazing. But the second guy that I met within like those 15 minutes is my composing hero, Marty O'Donnell. He was giving a Heiser lecture at AES in LA that year. And he was just, you know, like all of you guys said, just, you know, come and say hi. So I saw him, spotted him from the other side of the hallway. So I actually ran to him, like when a kid sees his own dad, and he's like, it's Marty O'Donnell. He was scared at first. He said, okay, it's a normal thing. But then, you know, I told him and I asked him if we could take a picture together, a selfie. So we snapped that and I posted it on Facebook. 20 minutes after that event, after I posted that picture, his colleague, Michael Salvatori, who is the audio director of Bungie Studio, the creators of Halo video game and now a very popular Destiny, game franchise. He sent me a friend request, and he asked me where I know Marty from. I told him, like, I'm your biggest fan. I've been listening. If it weren't for your music, I wouldn't have been, trying to get a career as a game composer, which is what I do now. Most of the time I compose music for games. And he said, like, hey, you know what? Send me your portfolio. I'd like to take a listen to it. So I sent him my portfolio. He took a listen. He said, like, I really like your work. Marty left Bungie. We're looking for new people to, join us. So Mike Salvatore helped me a lot in creating my, letters of introduction to Bungie, applying for the job opening as a composer, which I didn't get. I didn't get it that year. But then he said, when we chatted on Facebook, he said, like, listen, you may haven't gotten it now, but when the time comes, trust me, the time will come when you and I will work together, and I will call you and we will work together. And
Nikola,
that happened.
That's awesome. I'm wondering, other people, Joe, you went to your first AES convention in New York last time. What, you're working as a teacher,
Yeah.
with 3D audio.
Well, I started out as a sound engineer, and that I still am, albeit not right now. Lack of events and all of that. Yeah, I researched 3D audio for binaural headphone listening, and I teach live sound and audio fundamentals, at various academies and universities in England. But yeah, I think my tip for students or for new people to the convention is there's always so much going on, so really check the program beforehand and make some notes of things that are seemingly interesting to you. And if they're not that interesting, because I've had a few things where I've like, oh, that's actually not as creative a research as it is a technical one. And I've sat through the entire session not wanting to be rude and leave, but there were plenty of other things that I could have gone, and it would have been equally as interesting to have sat in those sessions instead. So certainly have a little peep of the program beforehand, and check what kind of tours and workshops are available as well, because they can often get quite busy.
Yeah.
Also, look people's faces up on, like, if you're going to see sounds funny, but like if you're young, or even if you just don't know what a lot of people look like, if there's a couple presentations that I wanted to see, I would often like find those people on the internet just so I know what their faces were. So I would, like, if I needed to seek them out and I couldn't go to their talk, I could at least see who they were. It sounds a little bit stalkerish, but it was helpful sometimes.
I had Wendy Carlos, my first AES in New York, which was the last one in the Hilton. I remember walking up the stairs and suddenly this voice says, "You're Jamie Angus. I need to talk to you." And she'd bought a Digi4, the 4-channel tape recorder, one of my only customers. And she needed to talk some details with me, and it was so good. Just, you bump into people as well as you're walking around. And actually taking advantage of that. If there's a mixing area, use the mixing area to mix around and talk to people. And I agree with checking out the program. My AES books, which little stars and things about which session I'm going to go to and which thing to hop to and everything else, can get quite busy sometimes.
I'd like to speak to that, because while that's true, the AES is this mix of papers and exhibits. And sometimes I feel that some of the folks who go to attend mainly the papers miss an opportunity. The opportunity to walk around and stop by, exhibits like Eventides. They may not realize that the people at those exhibits aren't necessarily like going to try to sell them something. They're actually some of the people like Richard and I who've designed this stuff and who would love to talk to them.
Oh yeah,
but I don't know that that occurs to many people, because as you say, Jamie, you're going to, there are specific papers that you want to attend, and I can't encourage people more than to attend the keynotes and the Heiser lecture. Those are really important papers. You'll invariably learn a lot, and a lot of the right people are there. But don't I guess I would ask them, the people who attend, who are mainly there for papers, to don't ignore the fact that just walking around the floor and having a chat at a stand, you might talk with a Ralph Kessler who's there. I mean, you know, Daniel Weiss. I mean, yeah, you're naming names of people that I miss, and people who are the reason I keep attending these things at this point in my life. These are lifelong friends.
I'd agree
So
with that.
I just wanted to make that.
Yeah, exhibits. I remember the first Paris one I went to, and I walked into that exhibit, and it was like I had never seen so much audio gear in one place at one time. It was amazing.
But Jamie, it's not just the gear; it's the people who can.
Oh no! And I went around and talked to them, and I agree. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of names of people because I know exactly what you mean. You get into chats with people on the stands, and you sometimes get into little technical discussions that you end up doing contacts with afterwards and sending emails to each other. I do remember doing that about op amps and things like that with I can't remember the person's name, but they were making mixing desks, and we ended up having this long discussion about, you know, the quality of op amps, and it was really fascinating.
And that could have been Saul Walker. That could have been Rupert Neve.
It was Rupert. It was Rupert Neve. You know, so yeah, wandering around a short floor, and then suddenly you end up having a half-hour to 45-minute conversation with Rupert Neve. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, I find that when
you're muted, Tony.
Walk
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. But I'm unmuted. I can now say I'm sorry, and everyone can hear me. No, I just want to just echo that. I had a totally out of the blue conversation, London AES, with Michael Gerson at our stand, and we went and had tea, and I spent an hour and a half speaking with him about linear math while I was thinking about how to design digital reverbs, and it really helped. He was brilliant. Sorry, Mandy.
That's okay. I find walking the floor, I meet so many people, and yeah, like you say, good friends. You know, Ivana Manley, you know, Chris Manley,
yeah.
You know, really good friends of mine, Dave Hill, Daniel. And like I say, the first one, I was really intimidated about talking to these people because, you know, I didn't feel that, you know, I had enough knowledge to ask them, but they all want to share knowledge. That's the thing, you know, the people that are building the equipment, like you guys, you just love what you do, and you love to teach people and encourage them, you know, so that they can learn more. And that's what I find. But I find it so hard to walk around because there's so much to see. So yeah, looking at the program, I always, you know, have an agenda of what I have to do, you know, for me personally, to expand, you know, knowledge and theories, and, you know, brainstorm with people, as well as look at equipment, and then as well look at stuff that's new, and then try and go to some of the, you know, talks and things that I wouldn't really look at to learn more, which has just helped me, you know, to get on and do other things. And the thing is that you form these friendships, and when you hit problems like I have in the past with, you know, sort of funny things that I can't understand, you can email them and they'll brainstorm with you. And like I say, where we're all in our own little bubbles now, and we don't, you know, have the big studios and the teachers and the tech support that we used to have, it's just a great, great source of information and brainstorming.
Could I could speak to that a little bit about like hanging out with people on the floor and stuff, but I also think it's important that people connect even afterwards. I feel like my mantra for AES every time is I'll sleep later. Like I pretty much just stay up the whole, you know, 4 days or so and meet everyone, go out with people all the time, because I feel like you always find out very interesting things, even post the day at dinner or after our drinks or whatever. And you get to know some more people. People are a little more relaxed and they're all introducing you to everyone. And you're like, oh, have you met this person? Oh, you're interested in that, you know, meet so-and-so. But I also think, I wish as a student, I also introduced myself to other students, because those become your colleagues later in life. And I don't want people to look at those students as like, oh, you're my competition. Like we can't be friends because you're the competition. It's like, no, they're your colleagues. They can help you. They can be a tool for you also, and you can, create great things with them too.
I remember some of my students found their way onto couches and bunked on people's floors in Berlin, and then invited all kinds of people to do the same thing, to visit them in Boston. And what happens is people end up making these these lifelong friendships, which is pretty incredible. So I think that's something that I would, make friends with students from other schools. Absolutely.
So
I
we're
found in my career that there's no competition. In a sense, we don't really compete against each other. The work comes to us, and if somebody doesn't like it, they go somewhere else. I've never really felt part of the AES and the master engineers that I've met through there. The competition, it's just more about sharing knowledge. Everyone is happy to share their knowledge compared to other studios that I come across, master engineers that don't go out and do that. They're not so willing to share. They're a bit arrogant. Whereas I find at the AES it's just really not like that. The master engineers get together, we talk, and we share knowledge. It's not knowledge is to be shared, isn't it? I feel, and that's what I love about it.
I remember when you and me and Piper, Mandy, were on that, we were recording competition judges, the three of us were on one panel. That was like, and it was interesting because we're all mastering engineers, so we all kind of approached it similarly, but we all had like slightly different things to say. So I thought it was kind of nice from a colleague standpoint, because I was like, oh, we all had good things to say, but we all focused on something slightly different. And I think that that's kind of a nice thing too. I'm sure that was very intimidating to the people who were sitting up there. But yeah, I thought that was really nice. It's a good thing to be able to listen to and learn from, like, just people you're on the recording competition panel with.
Well, we're at an interesting time now, obviously, as the AES convention goes virtual. It's this first sort of proof of concept and test. And so we're going to need to adapt what we've discussed here to this online environment. So instead of being in Vienna, it's going to be online. And what this means is we don't have to give money to the airlines and the hotels to attend the convention. So it's frustrating not to be in the same room with each other, but it means we can come from anywhere. And people who would have no chance of making it to Vienna could be registered and attending AES Virtual Vienna June 2nd to June 4th. I think I should know this. But please pay attention to all this networking and meeting of people, the discussion we've had here, because we're going to have to figure out how, while we're watching Jamie present, we're going to have to figure out how within the world of chat, we can meet friends who are also attending. So I think Nikola gives us this advice of don't be shy. We're going to have to figure out how to not be shy in a virtual world. So we'll see what that experience is like. But I would encourage you to click the thumb up button or to say, hello, I'm here from Quito, Ecuador, or whatever, and try to make friends electronically. We'll see if it works. I think once you're there, it's still, you've gone through the filter that John Krivit alluded to of the only people who are also there are also, they possess the same nerd factor that you have to be there. So I think it's good for your career to learn and meet people in this virtual context. So I hope you're brave enough to take that on. I don't know if any of you have looked at the program. Does anyone have any recommendations for something you think people should see? I think Joe does.
Well, I mean, recommendations, it's something that I really want to see. I mean, there's so much there anyway, like with the spatial audio track in particular, it's just exploded over the last few years. But the Beyond Left and Right, Where Did Immersive Live Sound Come From and Where Is It Going by David Shearman, that's just because it fuses two of my worlds, the live sound with the 3D audio, and, 3D for Live has become a really kind of new thing. Glastonbury had their 3D stage last year and I got to work in that area. So it's just a really nice kind of what's next for that, quite exciting, and I'm really interested about that one, as I am the gender equity and inequality. Is it a workshop or a panel?
Workshop. It's a workshop panel. Yes. So we then the way it's going to work is we've all pre-recorded little talks to do the place of the workshop panel talking, and then all being well, we've been kept it really short so there's time for a sort of discussion, online discussion afterwards. That's what we want to happen anyway. So let's hope it does. If you were at Glastonbury, I hope you may know James Hipperson, who did things at Glastonbury.
Well, I'm kind of centred down at Block 9, you know, so it's a little bit where it's like the after hours club and, you know, the kind of
Yeah, well,
They
yeah.
had the Icon stage, which had like a Martin Audio 3D rig on it.
Oh,
They
right, cool.
got kind of music, kind of drum and bass business.
See, I could.
Yeah, but it was really cool. It was great to have that as a first time thing in Glastonbury, and you know, it kind of coinciding with my years of research into spatial systems, you know, from my PhD and stuff. So
And
yeah,
it's great seeing this stuff because I remember people in York working in the early 80s on experimental 3D sound for performances, and it's taken a while, but it's now out there in live performance. It's superb.
the ideas are way ahead of the technology, I feel. And now technology is kind of caught up. It's exciting times. Well, it always is really with audio. It changes so quickly.
Anyone else have some thoughts on Virtual Vienna?
I actually was kind of interested in, so I guess as a mastering engineer, I'm always trying to do things faster and more efficiently and more predictably. So I enjoy some of the restoration and like the workflow discussions, particularly with tape. I've worked a lot with tape, but I didn't kind of grow up with it as a lot of these sort of seasoned people who talk about it have. So it's always helpful for me to learn about how people work. And there's one on the development of multi-track preservation workflow, Robert Friedrich, and he's going to talk about how they do stuff for Library of Congress and stuff. And I think mastering engineers were also very like, what's the current standard? What are people doing? And so it's nice to be refreshed with that sort of stuff for me too. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's really great. For those of you looking for the program, you just go to aeseurope.com and it'll take you there. It's searchable by author, by topic, and by time of day and so on.
I took a look at the program as well. And as I mentioned before, the Heiser lecture is important. I noticed there was a title, The Ravages of Time. I decided not to look at that one. Then there's audio from a biological perspective. I'm curious about that one. And I guess the one that frightens me is the perceptual audio coder, what to listen for. I know when we code things perceptually, it has an effect on the sounds. And I think I hear things, so I'm curious to see what that presentation's about. There are articles on mics, how to evaluate them, how to use them well. As Joe mentioned, the spatial audio ones, I'd probably watch all of them. And deep learning is a new technique, you know, neural nets. And it's going to allow us to expand this toolbox even further, one way or another. And then finally, this one I wrote down. This is the one I wish I had attended years ago, or wish Richard had attended. It's titled, Creating Audio Products with Maximum End User Value. I might learn something there.
I'm going to make a pitch
might.
for, I'm sorry, I'm going to make a pitch for the Student Delegate Assembly 1 first meeting and the second meeting. The first one is always done on the first day of the convention. It's where all the students gather, where announcements are made, where you kind of meet people who are other audio students from other schools. Usually when we have it in person, one person from each school gets up and says, I'm, John Krivit from Emerson College, and we have 22 students here, and we're excited to meet other people. And there are all kinds of announcements about scholarships, and there are announcements about the student recording competition and the student design competition. And different events and opportunities that are available. And then the last one, on the last day of the convention, is announcements are made, and sometimes elections happen, and it's just wonderful. It's kind of the on-ramp for getting interested if you're a student and have never been to an AES convention.
Yes, and you get to see who wins awards at the student recording competitions, and you get to take a look at the actual winning entries. So I think it's quite useful for everyone who's a student of AES to attend the final student delegate, the SDA2, on the last day, to see who gets the awards, who gets what piece of gear and what piece of software. That's always an interesting thing. I know I was always looking forward to it. So yeah, from my own experience, definitely check out any student event that's going on during the AES convention if you're a student and if you want to meet new people and hang out with a whole bunch of your colleagues and peers. That's the place to be. The student events.
Nice. Absolutely.
That student delegate assembly meeting is at 4:00 on the last day.
And that's not Eastern time. That's
Central European summertime. So you're going to have to do some math.
Yeah.
Well, we're well past our hour, and Eventide will get mad at us if we use up more of their jiggling of bits in an organized way. So we should probably wrap this up shortly. But I want to thank all of you for sharing your wisdom, and I look forward to seeing all of you in virtual Vienna.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you for putting this together.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
Alex, if we haven't gotten mad at you yet, it's never likely to happen. So
I'll keep trying.
really, it's our pleasure. No, thank you all for contributing, and great to, I've been attending AESs and I haven't met you all yet, so I guess I have to keep going back. Be great to meet you in person.
Also to point out that we're going to take a break from the AES Quarantide next week because of the virtual Vienna conference. So you there.
Makes sense.
So we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Fortnight.
Right after Vienna.
Bye.
Thanks.
Cheers, everyone. Stay well.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.